Hey y'all, welcome back to Convos with Bree. I'm Bree, BREE, and today is day 81 of the Visibility Challenge. Today I'm going to do things a little different. We're going to take a little break from talking about pattern mapping and all of these things that I have been personally learning and applying, things I've seen, all of it. And I want to talk a bit about how I got into this in the first place. I have a very untraditional story of how I really got into studying humans and behavior and the path that I have taken. My life has not been easy. I've had a lot of really hard things happen since I was small, but everything that I see that has happened, I also can see where I had opportunity, where it changed me, where it may have saved me. I have a very unique perspective on all of it. And what I want to talk about today is murder. Murder is really what started the spark. What got me watching things, what got me paying attention to people differently. And it started when I was very, very young. I had just turned 7. Like I was barely 7 for a minute before this case was brought to my attention by my grandma. Now, bless my grandma's heart. She should not have been talking about this in front of me that day. But I also can recognize where my grandma saw a lot of similarities and it scared her because she could see this happening to me. She could see this happening to her. She could recognize how close to home this really was. One, this happened in Iowa. It was 1994, August of 1994, and a little girl went missing who was 9 years old. Close in age to me. She also had a brother. She had 2 parents that loved each other very much like my household. And she had a lot of love around her. And then one day, she went missing. And nobody could find her. And nobody knew what had happened. And nobody knew where to look, or they couldn't even fathom that this had happened in this small town. And her parents had been out celebrating their anniversary. She had been staying with a family member, her and her brother. Everything was supposed to be safe. Everything was supposed to be okay. Nobody saw anything bad coming. And then the family member she was staying with had a friend over. That friend brought his son over. The kids played, the 2 adults hung out, they talked, they had some beers, and then they left. And then the next thing you know, the son is revealing that he woke up and this little girl was in the truck sitting next to him. And his dad got out with her 3 times and got back in the truck, and she was naked after the first time that they got out of the truck. And on that 3rd time, she didn't get back in the truck. He revealed all these details about the case that were heartbreaking, and they learned that she had been sexually assaulted and murdered by the friend of that family member. And his son had to witness what had transpired, what his dad had done. He kept quiet about it for, I believe it was a few weeks before they found her. And his dad had scared him into being quiet. And then he finally was able to say, I'm not going to be quiet. I'm going to tell what happened. I knew about this immediately after it happened. So I also saw where the search was happening and where they weren't finding her. And I was afraid for her. But I would lay down at night and I would know that she wasn't alive. I knew that she was no longer Earthside. I could feel that. I could feel that it was violent. I could feel that she had been scared. I felt things that I didn't understand how I could feel. And I didn't understand how I was so sure that I was right. And then they found her, and she was no longer Earthside. And I thought about her family, and I could not stop thinking about her family and about how her brother was there that night and how damaging that would be growing up with this terrible, terrible circumstance. And having fun and hanging out and being in the hot tub and thinking that life was great, and then everything is terrible. You wake up and everything has changed. And I think about those parents celebrating their anniversary. How could you ever celebrate the same again? Knowing what happened to your daughter while you were just trying to celebrate your love for each other. I was only 7, and I remember crying so many tears in my room and just keeping it to myself how much it was affecting me, that I knew that this was happening somewhere in the world. That I could feel all this pain and all this suffering. And before that moment, I didn't understand that kids could be murdered. I didn't understand that bad things could happen to kids. I genuinely believed that the only bad things that happened to kids came from other kids doing them to them. I thought you could trust teachers. I thought you could trust adults. I don't know. I didn't think that it would be that. And I had moments where my mom would tell me that there were certain adults that I could not be alone with. I could not be around. I needed to watch extra carefully. And I listened to her, but I didn't really understand why. And I wanted to know why. The curiosity started sparking because when everyone was with, I think of this one person in particular that I grew up around because everyone played a sport that this person was involved with. So whenever we would I went with my parents all the time when they would go and play, because I would see my cousins, I would see all my friends. There were tons of kids out there. And while we were in a bar setting for the events, it was very much like, but this part of the bar, this part of the outside element is just for you guys. So it felt safe because we were there. All these adults were around that I knew and I saw weekly. So it seemed like it was safe. And that's why it was so confusing when all of a sudden it was, hey, but this one person that comes out there is not safe. And I started paying attention to all the adults around me. And it seemed like they all knew this one person was not safe. And they would watch out for us extra carefully around this person. But the part that I couldn't really understand was when they were with this person, it was fine. Everyone was laughing. Everyone was having a good time. Nobody said anything honest to him. So why was it okay for adults to be around him, but not kids? I genuinely didn't have that understanding. And I was younger when that first happened. So then when the murder of this young girl happened and my grandma brought it up right in front of me, I knew it was because she was scared and she wanted me to really understand that this happened and this could happen to me if I was not cautious, if I was not aware, if I was not understanding that the world was not all rainbows and butterflies, and the bullies that I thought were the worst thing on the planet were not even close to the bad things that exist. So then I started getting information. I needed to know more things. And I started finding a lot of crime shows and crime discussions that when nobody was around, I would watch them because I was not obviously supposed to watch anything about murder at 7. But I would find ways to get information about it or find a paper and read about it or whatever I could do as the years went on. And once they moved it over to 24-hour news, that's when a lot of the let's talk about it. Let's break down the murder. Let's break down the mindset started really coming out. I would watch Nancy Grace. I would watch anything that I could find that anyone was talking about what had happened. And then my world just imploded. It was like all of these bad things that had happened to kids. And I realized, oh, especially men. That's really who it was I needed to look out for. It was men. Because there wasn't a lot about women doing anything to anyone, like murder or anything like that. And if there was something, it was usually like they were having a break or they lost a baby and they were like trying to find their baby. And it made sense. I could understand what was happening logically. But men, it something clicked in their brain and they just did whatever they wanted to do and they hurt you. And they hurt you in terrible, unspeakable ways. And I didn't know how to not be afraid. How do I not be afraid of every man that I meet that I don't know? How do I know which adults I can trust? Because once I started finding more things, I found that in most cases, it's somebody that they thought they could trust. It wasn't just some random stranger. And that made me even more afraid because it felt like anyone could lie to you if they wanted something from you. And then it got even worse because the older I got, the more I started to experience this firsthand. I had somebody that I trusted very deeply, I was very close to, hurt me and try to molest me. I had somebody that I loved and trusted more than anything who knew about that information, multiple people, and they didn't tell me that this person might try to do that to me. I had a lot of people in my life as I got older that I trusted very much, and they very much so let me down and hurt me and tried to hurt me even worse than they were able to. And that didn't stop. I thought that, like, I don't know why, but I thought that, like, once I hit a certain age, that would quit. And I also had a brief period where I genuinely felt like if I was really heavy, if I didn't care about my body, if I didn't go to the gym, if I didn't treat myself well the way that I previously had been, people would leave me alone. I wouldn't be a risk any longer for getting hurt because they wouldn't want me the same way. And then I showed up to a party. It was an appreciation party, and it was one of my very best friends in the whole wide world, one of my safest spaces on earth. And I walked in, and there was a strange, over 6-foot man. First thing he did was try to pull me into a bathroom and take advantage of me. And then he mocked me and mimicked me and tried to be like a bully to me the remainder of this weekend. Nothing I did, it wasn't about me. That's what I realized. No matter what I tried, no matter how nice I was, no matter how kind I was, no matter how understanding, no matter what I looked like, none of it mattered. If some man honed in on me and was like, that is, for whatever reason, the person that I want something from, they would just do whatever they wanted to do. And it's really weird when you know this so young and you start to see so many instances of this happening to women. And they truly didn't do anything to deserve it. It terrified me. So I started very young diving into why would people do this? I didn't want to know about the murder as much anymore. I wanted to know the mindset behind it. I wanted to know how somebody walks through and gets to the actual point that they are committing these crimes. I wanted to know what was so bad that they felt like this was their only option. I wanted to understand, not just for me as a woman, as a girl, as all of the things that I have been throughout this journey. It was that I wanted to know because I also really wanted to help the person that was struggling. Somebody that murders somebody that hurts children, somebody that partakes in these heinous crimes. They're not doing well. They're not healed, thriving individuals. They are hurting deeply on the inside. They are out of alignment. They are lost. They are lost on the inside. I've never seen anyone that was partaking in this and they were not. Like, they were just hurt and they were lost. And I thought so young, if I could figure out what was hurting them, maybe I could change it. I can't change the murders. And I know that. I knew that. But I could maybe do something that would help the world heal before it ever got to that point. Maybe I could be that to somebody who would have gone that route, but they knew me and they had a safe space to land and to talk about things and to feel what it feels to be loved and cared for and treated like a human being, and to empathize with them and to help them figure out why they're feeling the way they're feeling and what to do with these feelings. And it was so funny because everyone told me when I started school for forensic psychology that I wouldn't be able to do it, because what I really wanted to do with that degree was to go into prisons and actually talk with people that had been convicted of crimes. And I just wanted to learn with them and dissect it and help them understand themselves more deeply, and in turn understand this whole aspect of murder and of crimes and of violence and emotions and all of it more deeply for myself. And everyone told me that I wouldn't be able to do it with my hearing loss, and I wouldn't be able to do it because I didn't have the right kind of awareness when it came to, like, if they said one time in a class, if you can't clock every person in this room, what they're wearing, what their hair looks like, all of it, and you wouldn't notice if one of them changed their shirt or changed their hair, that you had no right being in the field of forensic psychology. And that is not where I shine. I literally walked into my parents' house one time. They had changed the color and all of these things, like their entire kitchen. And I didn't notice it. It took me like 20 minutes before I was like, oh my God, the kitchen's different. So everyone was telling me, like, Bree, you're never going to be able to do this. Like, why are you even trying this? Why are you wasting your money and your time? But it was never a waste for me. And I had friends that told me, don't expect to get an A in this forensics psychology class because, like, I'm a 4.0 student and I got a C in that class. I tanked my grade point average over that class. So they're like, don't beat yourself up. Just try to pass. I got an A in that class because I was obsessed with it. I loved it. It made sense to me. It all clicked. I wanted to volunteer and get my hands on every lesson that he gave us. I love it. I still to this day remember things that he taught me. And I will never, like, if all of the classes would have been like that, I would have been so successful. But unfortunately, after that first semester, it was like all downhill from there. I had very uninspired professors. I had one that was a complete bully and would not leave me alone about my hearing loss. And she was making fun of me. She wasn't trying to understand it in any way. She denied me all capabilities to be able to participate in class. She wouldn't put captioning on movies, but she wouldn't let me leave either to go rent it and watch it on my own time. She just was horrendous, and she broke my spirit. And it was like a domino effect where it was like I got to the point where I could only take so much. And by the time I got to that bully teacher, I was so unmotivated at all of my classes. I was bored to death. I felt like I was never going to be able to make it stick. All of the classes that they had me taking, it was like none of them had to do with forensic psychology anymore. And I burned through electives so fast because that's what I'm here to learn about. That's the thing that drives me the most crazy about college is if you took what we're passionate about and you made us the best we could be, we would all thrive. But instead, you give us all of these things we'll never even use, and you crush us. You crush us. And it's just the worst design. I would redo the entire system, but that's for another day. But I loved when I had what I was there to learn. I loved every class that involved what I was actually there to learn. Everything else, terrible, 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 terrible. And I ended up, my job that I was working burned down right when I was in with this bully teacher who just would not help me, would not listen. And yes, I should have gone and gotten help. They have departments for that. I knew that I should have gone for help. But at that point in my hearing loss journey, I was in no shape to stick up for myself. I was still wanting to pretend I didn't really have hearing loss. I was not handling the news well at all. And I was not the person that I am today. And I was struggling entirely too much to be able to cross that bridge on my own. And I didn't really feel like I really had anyone that understood how I was feeling enough that could go with me and stay calm about it. And so I always do this thing, and I'm recognizing this more and more, but at every story that I talk about where my life kind of went off the rails because I knew the thing I should do, but I didn't do it because my number one reason always is, what if I'm wrong? What if I thought I did enough to try to change this, but I was still too emotional? Especially back then, I was incredibly emotional about my hearing loss. I was incredibly emotional about coming to terms with it. And I felt mortified. I felt like I just could not deal with this. So it always made me wonder if I truly took all the steps that I could have taken with this person that would have made them understand how much they were hurting my feelings and how much they were like ruining my self-worth and self-confidence and desire to be here at all. But I didn't feel confident enough to have that conversation either. So I didn't want to go and involve a department that would open up a formal complaint against this professor, because what if I was like pulling the rug out from under them? What if I was getting them fired from their job? What if something terrible happened to them because I reported this? And I never wanted to be responsible for the demise of somebody else. That felt worse to me than just leaving and saying, whatever, I'll figure it out. And so I didn't stick up for myself the way that I should have a lot of times because I was too afraid of the fallout. I was too afraid of what could possibly happen to this person. And I didn't want to ruin anyone's life. So, in a sense, I ruined my own. I sacrificed myself. And I've always been a person that will sacrifice myself. Oh, if we all need water, give it to everybody else. I'll be okay. Like, I'll go last. I feed everybody else before I eat. Like, things like that. I have always been that way. And it was funny because for a while I tried to stop doing that because I was so upset with myself about leaving that college and that experience and not finishing that degree, that I decided I wasn't going to do that anymore. I wasn't going to care about anyone else. I wasn't going to sacrifice myself anymore. But I ended up just kind of hating that too. I was doing that wrong also. I was not thinking about anybody ever, and I was just saying whatever felt good and trusting that people would tell me if they wanted to do something else. And then people would get mad at me and tell me that we always did what I wanted, and they were upset with how I responded and how I took charge. And it just felt like no matter what I did, I was never going to win. I was never going to win. I was never going to be able to please anybody. I was never going to be able to figure out who I was supposed to be or how to get what it is I wanted without upsetting the rest of the world or ruining someone's life or any of it. And then I was trying to figure out how to be extremely hard of hearing in a hearing world. And I got made fun of so ruthlessly about that by everyone. And it wasn't like this was something I asked for or like it was something I did to myself or any of that. And I couldn't understand why people were so incredibly mean about it. And for so much of my life, it felt like I was putting everybody else out. Everybody had to do something for me to be able to hear them, to be there for whatever. And they made sure to let me know that they had to do that for me and that it was not something that they would have chosen to do. And it just felt awful and it hurt my heart all the time. And I just felt like maybe the world would be better off without me. And there was a time where I thought, my hearing loss isn't going to get better, is what they tell me. There's no surgeries. I can't, with the tools that are available, it doesn't really work for me the way that it works for everybody else. And so there was nothing. And I had an audiologist tell me one time that there would come a time in my life where I'm completely deaf. And I asked all my friends to learn sign language with me. And 0% of them learned sign language for me. And I learned sign language and my family started learning sign language, which was awesome. But they dropped off and we didn't really use it. So it's like I know sign language, but it's also incredibly hard to read it. And there's so many forms of it that I still feel like it's not even a viable tool for me to use. And so I was just feeling like one day it is just going to be me. I will be completely alone on this earth. I will not have sound. I will not have connection. I will not have anything but myself. And something about that actually felt peaceful because for the first time I felt like, well, at least nobody will have to deal with me. At least nobody will have to sacrifice to be with me or to be connecting with me. What a sad, sad way of feeling. but also beautiful, because that was my first realization into how safe I actually am with myself, how peaceful I am when it is just me. And it also made me really grateful to even the people that were like, I can't learn sign language. I just can't. Like, some of them even tried a little bit and they're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I can't. And granted, there's a lot more resources today than there was back then when I was asking for this. But I had a few people that I knew that I could sit in a room and be silent with. I had a few people that were like, I'll always turn the captions on when we watch something together. Like, I even had people that would just leave the captioning on all the time because they didn't necessarily love it, but they wanted to acclimate themselves so that they enjoyed it when we watched something together, because they didn't want to feel so stressed out by the captioning. So they were like getting used to it. And it's funny because a lot of them would call me later and be like, oh my God, I love the captions. I've been missing so much of this show. And so it was cool. It was cool. They found their own ways to let me know that I was important and that they would find a way to connect with me wherever we went in this journey. And, you know, texting became a huge thing. And so then we just texted each other and instead of calling, and there's been so many things that have changed. But I have just had such a wide view. I see so many people that are so hurt and so unaware of what it is their impact is on others. And I think that's what I really mean by I didn't want anyone to get in trouble. It's more so I didn't want them to not fully realize this impact and then get in trouble and then go straight to anger over self-awareness. I know how easy it is for people to get stuck in emotions of anger and frustration and loss and grief and feeling controlled and feeling powerless. And if somebody goes to anger before they have a chance to understand and to try to change the behavior, they no longer are looking at anything as anything that they could have done differently. Now they're looking at how you ruined their life, how you hurt them, how unfair it was. And that is a very, very dangerous place to leave hurt people stuck. Because it makes it even harder on somebody who is already so focused on what life has done to them, that it's just another thing it's done to them. Now, if I could go back now and be this version of myself, I would have called a meeting with that teacher. We would have sat down one-on-one, and I would have said, I'm going to record this conversation. I won't use it unless I need to. And I would have said, this is what's happening. This is what's going to happen. Or I am going to go down to the disability office and I will file a formal complaint. I would have been very open, very honest, very direct, but I also would have been open and willing for understanding and for the behavior to change. I did go to school at a different college for regular psychology because that was all they had. And I ended up going to a school that was intentionally stealing funds from students. And I was one of the students that they did this to. So right before I was supposed to graduate, I got a phone call saying, if you don't pay us $10,000 by the end of the week, you won't graduate. And I was a single mom with a young son, and I was working at a job that was not paying me and kept promising me that they would pay me soon. So I most definitely did not have $10,000. I wasn't even sure how I was going to get rent if this company would never paid me. And I was devastated. But again, I didn't know what you're supposed to do with that. Nobody prepares you for getting fucked over by the system. They really don't. So I had no idea where to go or who to turn to. And I just honestly was so fed up with them as well that I just said to life, I give it up to you. Take me where you're going to take me. I want to do this without burning down any bridges. I just want you to take me to the next place I'm supposed to be and make this offer something. Help me make this into something beautiful. And years went by. And then I got a letter saying that the school was being sued. A bunch of students got together and were suing the school. And they won. And all of that got dropped, all of it. And I couldn't believe it. It was so beautiful. I'm still waiting to hear back about my appeal on the school with the mean, bully of a teacher, because I decided while I was there, I may as well appeal them both. I may as well share my experience. I'm stronger now. I'm in a much better space now. So I may as well just shoot my shot and see what happens. So all of those years later, I did it. And I stood up for myself in those areas. And I've been doing this much more without being afraid of what will happen, because I am having better conversations and I am being crystal clear with my needs before I even come into these lives of others. And before I agree to anything, I make sure that I'm crystal clear about what I need, what my expectations are, and if they can accommodate. And if they tell me yes, and if they suddenly decide they can't, or they start bullying me, or they start refusing to provide the accommodations that I need, I no longer see this as a me problem. I see this as a opportunity to either learn to work together, or I have to stand up for myself. I have to stand up for what is right. No longer do I succumb to the feeling of being too much or worrying about how other people have to handle their own consequences. Now I see them learning. I picture them finding lessons that they never would have found. I picture them becoming better humans, being kinder humans, being more empathetic, being more consistent, and staying true to their word. And if it's meant to be, it will be. I don't need to stress or worry or push when it feels forced. If it is meant to be, it will always come back around and it will be. It didn't feel right to do it all the way back then, but eventually it did. And it worked. I love to see humans as a whole. How complex, how trauma, how emotions, how our experiences, our support system, our self-worth, our self-confidence, all of these areas. I love to see the patterns that are intertwined. And I think that's why I started this with the murder case and taking you back there, because that's where I've spent so much of my time understanding humans, is in these crazy cases that have so much information to all sides. And it's really changed my view on how impactful we all are. I see people that think that they're just normal humans. They think they're decent, normal people in the world. But then they're so controlling and they're so judgmental and they're so loud about how they feel about every negative thing in their life, and everything that somebody else does that they view as a negative or they can't quite understand. I see how they reign over each other. I see how mean and how spiteful they can be. I see relationships that should be about love that turns into this nightmare of control and manipulation and all of these things. And it sneaks in. It sneaks in and they can't even see it on themselves. And then they go out into the world and then they push somebody over the edge with their impulsive reactions and the impulsive things that they say. And they think it's funny or they think that it's justified. And then they cannot see how their everyday minor interactions are what's shaping the lives of everyone around them. And I think genuinely that the biggest change in the world is not sitting down with serial killers and finding out why. The biggest change we as a collective can make is sitting down and looking within. Where can we be kinder? Where can we be more informed? Where can we do things better? Where can we allow freedom to those that are in our lives? Where can we alleviate some of our fears? Where can we look at what we do in our day-to-day? Where and how that influences ourselves and everyone and everything around us. I genuinely think the biggest, greatest change comes from the collective normal, the everyday humans that could look a little bit deeper. The keyboard bullies that just spout off anything online. That is where we have the biggest amount of change. It's in everyday interactions. It's in these small, small things. And I genuinely believe that everything would start getting better. Everything would feel better. We would treat each other better. And there wouldn't be so much of this if we could just learn to do this a little differently. And that is why I do what I do. That is why I talk about what I talk about. That is why I am who I am today. All of it has brought me here. All of it has opened my eyes. It has made me aware. It has shaped my perspective. It has changed my perspective. It has deeply changed my perception of self. It has allowed me to find the path that I was always looking for. I was never going to find it in school. I was never going to find it in any of the other paths that I tried. It was always this one that I'm walking right now. All right, y'all. I hope you enjoyed this. This one was a little different, and I just wanted to give you a little insight about who I am and how I got here and why I am the way I am. So I hope this gave you a little insight. I hope that it made you think about yourself. Think about where you could stand to sit and change some of your responses, change some of your thoughts, change some of your patterns to align you more deeply with who you truly are. Let off some of these learned behaviors, these fearful responses, and find your way to a little softer space. Nobody's ever been mad finding themselves in a softer, kinder, more loving space of life. All right, y'all. Remember, nothing that is meant for you will miss you. And it's okay to just be here now.